Chapter 22. Threads of Fate. Mako moved further down the winding path, the weight of the past clinging to him like a second skin. The mountains loomed behind him, a silent witness to the choices he had made. The air was crisp, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, yet the world felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. Doubt gnawed at the edges of his thoughts. Had he betrayed them? Had he gone too far? He paused for a moment, feeling the thrum of earth mana responding to his turmoil. The whispers came again, rising from the stone beneath his feet, threading through his bones like a forgotten song. The taint of shadow had infiltrated Eros. Mako stopped in his tracks, his breath catching. The voices were not his own. They vibrated with the energy of the earth itself, low and steady, resonating in his core. He let the mana flow into him, steadying his mind, forcing himself to listen. What you did severed the connection between the shadow mana and the raw source of life. Aros was disconnected, though it drained him and harmed him. He will find his way with mana again. He is the chosen one. He is the avatar. Mako exhaled sharply, his grip tightening around the handle of his axe. He had known this to be true. The doubt, the anger of the others, it had clouded his judgment. But here, alone with the mana, he could hear the truth. His truth. Then the air shifted. A whisper of movement, the faintest shift in the wind. A hunter's instinct screamed in his gut. Without hesitation, he pivoted, raising his axe just as steel flashed toward him from the darkness. The clash rang out like a bell tolling a challenge. Mako gritted his teeth, locking eyes with the figure before him. A woman, cloaked in blackened leather, her silver-white hair catching the moonlight. Her lavender eyes gleamed with sharp calculation. A Minith elf appeared. She didn't hesitate. Her dagger and sword moved as extensions of her will, one striking high, the other low, forcing him to react. Mako twisted, deflecting the dagger with the haft of his axe, while pivoting his body away from the sword's deadly arc. "Persistent," he grunted. "You have no idea," she replied, voice smooth as silk, yet carrying the edge of a razor. She pressed the attack, her movements fluid, weaving through shadows as though they embraced her. Mako countered with raw power, using his axe not just as a weapon but as a shield, turning away slashes that would have cut lesser men apart. Sparks flew where steel met steel, illuminating their deadly dance. Then the battle changed. Mana thrummed in the air. Mako felt it before he saw it, an unseen force coiling through his limbs. The earth beneath his feet shifted, responding to the primal call of his spirit. His connection to the land pulsed like a heartbeat, and as he brought his axe down, the ground beneath her trembled. She leapt back, eyes narrowing. "So, you do hear them." Mako exhaled, feeling the whispers through the earth, the energy coursing through him. "You knew." "I suspected." She shifted her stance. The shadows around her deepened, the mana in her blood responding in kind. Darkness coiled at her fingertips, wrapping around her blades like living tendrils. "And now I need to know just how much you understand." She struck again, but this time the darkness moved with her. Her blade elongated, shadow weaving into solid form, giving her reach beyond the physical. Mako barely dodged in time, rolling beneath her strike as the air split with the force of her attack. He retaliated with a stomp that sent a ripple through the earth, jagged rock erupting in her path. She twisted mid-air, flipping over the hazard with an acrobat's grace, landing in a crouch with a smirk. "Not bad," she mused, "but predictable." Mako didn't give her time to gloat. He rushed forward, axe swinging in a wide arc, forcing her to backstep. But she wasn't running. She was drawing him in. The moment his swing overextended, she struck, rolling beneath his guard and slashing upward. Pain bloomed across his ribs. Mako staggered back, growling as he pressed a hand to the shallow wound. The Minith elf twirled her blade, blood glistening along its edge. "First blood," she purred. "Do try to keep up." Mako wiped his mouth, a grin curling despite the pain. "You talk too much." He shifted his stance, planting his feet firmly. The mana responded, traveling up through his limbs, into his core. The mountain was with him, the stone, the soil, the very weight of the land. When he moved, it was with the force of an avalanche. She barely dodged as he came at her, his axe cleaving through air where she had been a moment before. The force alone sent dust and leaves spiraling, but she wasn't untouched. His presence, his raw power, had forced her onto the defensive. And that's when she realized he was learning. Each clash, each evasion, each wound, they weren't just marks of battle. They were lessons. He was reading her movements, adjusting, adapting, just as she was. Her eyes narrowed. Clever boy. Mako exhaled, steadying his stance. Getting tired? She chuckled. Not even close. They surged at each other again, steel clashing, shadows twisting, earth trembling. Neither gained ground, neither relented. And then, as suddenly as it began, they stopped. Both stood, weapons raised, chests heaving, eyes locked in silent understanding. A stalemate. The forest around them held its breath. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it something neither could name. Mako slowly lowered his axe, his grip still firm. "Why are you really here?" She sheathed her dagger, her expression unreadable. "I need answers." The dark elf crossed her arms, watching him intently. "The shadows have been whispering to me for days. Mana flows strangely now, and I've been drawn to it, to you, and to the boy with golden eyes." Aros. Mako's grip on his axe tightened. "Who are you?" "Sin," she said simply. "And you, Mako of the Wolf Clan, are part of something much bigger than yourself." Mako exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, I figured that out already." Sin chuckled, shaking her head. "Then maybe you're not as lost as I thought." She studied him for a long moment before continuing. "The Shadowborn destroyed my homeland. My people are scattered. My brother is dead. Since then, the shadows have spoken to me, leading me here. I don't know why, but the golden-eyed boy, Aros, he reached out to me in the mana threads. He is calling, and something is coming for him." Mako remained silent, absorbing her words. Mako watched her gleaming lavender eyes. "You done testing me?" "For now," she said, smirking. "I had to be sure." "Sure of what?" Sin's smirk faded slightly, her expression growing unreadable. "That you were real." Mako frowned. "What the hell does that mean?" She studied him, then shrugged. "Mana flows strangely now, and I've been drawn to it. To you, and to the boy with golden eyes. The Shadowborn are on the move. Mana in some areas has become twisted. I saw something else. A wolf, a great white wolf, shifting between forms," Sin said. Mako's breath hitched. "Fenra." "She's waiting for you," Sin said, watching him closely. "For us." Mako exhaled, grounding himself. The earth beneath him hummed in approval. If Fenra was part of this, then their path was clear. He met Sin's gaze. "Then we find her first, then Aros." A voice cut through the tense air, warm and laced with amusement. "Well now, that was a fine bit of dancing if I ever saw one. Mighty fine courtship ritual if I ever saw one. You two gonna keep flirting with your weapons? Or can we skip to the part where you share a meal like civilized folk?" A dwarf stood before them on the path, clad in monk-like robes, a jug of ale slung lazily over one shoulder. His bald head gleamed under the moonlight, and his grin was wide, mischievous. He took a long swig from his jug, then wiped his mouth on the back of his hand. Now that the two of ye are done hugging each other and fussing over who's the better killer, might ye know where a weary dwarf can get a good meal and a refill? He shook his near-empty jug for emphasis. Mako and Sin exchanged glances. Then, to their own surprise, they both laughed, tired, breathless chuckles that neither had expected. Mako rolled his shoulders, sliding his axe back into its loop. I think we might be able to help with that. Sin sheathed her blade, crossing her arms as she studied the dwarf with interest. And who exactly are you, old man? The dwarf grinned, stepping forward with a confident swagger. Goran, monk of the first path, and the occasional deliverer of goblin beatdowns. He took another swig of his ale, eyes twinkling with mischief. And tonight? Looks like I just found myself some traveling companions.